We have a ton of 49ers news to cover, and for once, almost all of it is good. Plenty of people back at practice today, and just in time as the Niners try to make a run to the playoffs at the end of the season. We'll cover it all on Under Review. What is good, everybody? Welcome to Under Review on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Networks. I am Rob Stats Guerrera. He is Vish Kumar. And Vish, I'm in a very good mood. Christian McCaffrey is back at practice. Jake Moody is back at practice. Jauan Jennings is back at practice. Hell, even Dre Greenlaw had a helmet on and was running on the sidelines. I just have one thing to say, my friend. Avengers!
How many times did you practice that?
Yes! Yes! That is how I'm feeling right now. I'm so freaking excited. And I get all the caveats. I get it. He might get hurt again. Who knows? It's no big deal. He might not even play against the Buccaneers. I don't care. Today is a happy day. I am filled with hope. And I needed this little boost, man. I needed it.
All right, tell us the truth, Rob. How many times did you practice the Avengers soundtrack with yourself, talking
3.
through, then mastering the timing of you hitting it? Because I missed it during the pause. I talked in there very rudely because you didn't train me for this, and you mastered it. If the YouTube audience is watching, they would have seen that your hand signals, your body language perfectly aligned with the sound. 3 times, you said?
3 times. First of all, I love those movies. Love them. Like, I was sitting in the theater when that actually happened, like giddy freaking out. So anytime I get the chance to watch those
is this in the first one at the very end with the Avengers A standing on Stark Tower?
No, oh God. All right. Well, we don't need to get into a whole thing. It's at like the climax of the whole friggin' saga.
I'll tell you, because I thought the last movie was terrible.
Well, all right. We don't need to get into it.
I think the saga peaked at Infinity War.
Infinity War and then Endgame. Right after that.
Endgame was the Endgame for the saga. It sucked.
Oh,
no, I'm kidding.
God.
It didn't suck, but I didn't necessarily prefer it as a movie.
John Crispin says, thank God Christian McCaffrey is back. Andre says, let's hope he gets on the field. Tanisha says,
I upset you with that?
Vish. Our boys are back. You can't get me down today, Vish. You can't get me down. That is
Rob, our show doesn't work if you're happier than me or nicer than me. Like, you have to be the mean guy.
Look, I'm like, dude, I'm sitting there on the bye week. I'm watching the Eagles do everything they can to fumble away the game against the Jaguars, and Trevor Lawrence's, and gets a win for the Eagles by throwing a pick in the end zone on first down. I'm watching the Bears.
He became a verb.
The Bears are winning, are trailing by 1 score with about 20 seconds left before halftime, and then they give up a 50-plus yard touchdown run, and the Cardinals blow them out. The Colts, bench Anthony Richardson to go with Joe Flacco because that's going gives them a better chance to win, and then they totally biff themselves against the Vikings and they lose. Like, the bye week was rough for the 49ers playoff chances. I needed some good news, and we got it today. All those guys are back at practice. They're ready to make a run.
So I wouldn't call the bye week rough. I would say it was just unlucky because the Niners didn't necessarily lose footing, but they didn't gain it because of any losses. And the one you missed, which is the last one to add the cherry on top to unfortunate results, was Seattle losing to the Rams in a very winnable game, because Seattle is the team the 49ers have beaten in the division, while the Rams currently have a win over the Niners. And tiebreaker-wise, it would be nicer for the 49ers to have to deal with Seattle, who I think is the inferior team with the inferior quarterback. But I'm with you. Everybody's here to hear us talk about Christian McCaffrey's practice window being opened. You're so happy you're drinking healthy soda. This weekend, you posted those nasty red shoes on the ottoman, that poor ottoman. I don't know what kind of disease it's infected with the couch on your house. Nice setup, though. But here we go, Rob. Niners football is back. Christian McCaffrey is back. And if we know anything about Christian McCaffrey, regardless of how tricky or how, maybe illogical this timeline looks and how scary the experimental procedure sounds, nobody gives it all on every single play quite like Christian McCaffrey. And it's hard to see him not playing when he's this adamant and this much on a mission, clearly, to get himself back on the field. And it's hard to see him not contributing because, again, like I said, nobody gives more effort on any given play than Christian McCaffrey. The guy dies every single time on every given play because he plays so hard.
Mike Silver has an article up in The Athletic with a bunch of quotes from guys happy that McCaffrey is back. Ricky Pearsall had a good one. Quote, just the way he's moving. He's got that pop. I told him, you're looking bouncy, bro. When they split him out, he looked like a receiver out there. It would be really cool to play with him, and hopefully that happens soon. I came to this place today as I was picking up my son from school, talking to you, actually, as I'm literally in the pickup line. I'm talking to you on the phone.
Right. Because you and I just have conversations with you waiting in line for the school.
Right.
That's just what we do.
Look, this
like normal people.
It may be doomed from the start, okay? Like, I fully admit, who knows? I've said I can't expect anything from him because this injury could flare up after a single play. Doesn't even have to be a carry. Could be him pass blocking. But you know what? Like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Eventually, at some point, you have to try to get him back on the field. And if they're going to tear, they're going to tear. But you can't sit and clutch your pearls. Like, you have to. It's Schrodinger's cat. You won't know if the cat's alive or dead until you open the box. And the Niners have to open this box.
You're killing it today, buddy. That was a good one. But what I'll add to that as well is I agree with you. At the end of the day, Jed York pays $16 million for Christian McCaffrey to play football on the football field. You can't be scared about him getting hurt. You can do that with every NFL player on any given play. At the end of the day, he has to be on the field and he contributes. And if he gets hurt, that's the business of playing football. But if he wants to go and if he's healthy enough to go, which it seems like he's just on a mission to go, then he's got to go, Rob. And the quote you put up about Ricky Pearsall talking about him as the receiver, I think that's the most underrated part of his return. Right now, pound for pound, he is the best wide receiver on the 49ers. He's the best wide receiver at lining up in all three positions, Z, F, and X. He's the best route runner. He's the most explosive in and out of his cuts. He sets up his routes probably the best of all the available guys. He maybe doesn't get off the ball completely like a receiver just because, he has a different way of doing it. But I think if he lined up on the outside for a year, he would be a 100-catch receiver. He would be a better wide receiver than Deebo Samuel. Heck, he might be a better wide receiver than Brandon Ayuk. Maybe not, but what I'm coming to say is he is the best wide receiver on this team in terms of how he runs routes, how he sets people up, how he gets open, all of those sort of things. Mm-hmm. And the Niners have actually ran the football very well. The thing people have talked about is why are they so difficult to guard in man coverage? Well, the reason the 49ers why are they having such a difficult time against man coverage? It's a funny stat because if you look at the 49ers the 2 years prior with Christian McCaffrey essentially healthy, they devastated man coverage. And the reason they would do this is they would essentially have 3-level concepts in the middle of the field, where the lowest level would be Christian McCaffrey on a choice route. Then you would have some sort of dig route with a George Kittle, a Deebo Samuel coming across the quarterback's face. And then you would have something over the top of that, like a post or something with Brandon Ayuk. And essentially Brock Purdy is reading this high to low, and you're putting these man coverage defenders in conflict because if you're going to have a guy come down and cut the dig, well, then nobody's guarding Christian McCaffrey one-on-one on the choice route. And then if you're going to come down and double the choice route, well, then the dig is going to open up just because of the spacing of these route concepts. And so this is where the 49ers have missed Christian McCaffrey. Contrary to what people have talked about, they've ran the football well this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, they were top 15 in terms of EPA per play in running, and they run the football very well in neutral game scripts. They struggle to run the football when they're ahead, and teams know they're running the football to try and close the game. That's where they miss the talent of Christian McCaffrey, of course, to take 2-yard runs and turn them into 4-yard runs. But they also struggle to run the football from when they're behind because naturally they're losing. And who runs the football well in those situations? You're throwing to get back into the game. And so all of this is to say they are a good running football team without Christian McCaffrey. That's not exactly where they miss him. They miss him in marrying the run and the pass, and then specifically this issue versus man coverage, because he is the best separator on this team in man coverage. He's the best separator versus corners. He's the best separator versus safeties. He's the best separator versus linebackers. And that's where he's going to make the biggest impact, Rob, and that's where he's going to change this offense coming back. I'm really excited too because the Bucs aren't very good on defense, and without Godwin and Evans, Baker sure is fun to watch, but they're not too threatening on offense, especially for a Niners secondary that's been playing very aggressively and very well of late. So this should be a good matchup for the 49ers to kick back into things.
Well, that's what I want to see. I want to see the 49ers offense put the fear of God back into people a little bit. And Kyle Posey had a great post from Niners Nation. He said the 49ers' third down rushing success rate dropped 17% this year with Mason instead of McCaffrey on the field. The red zone is where his injury handcuffed the Niners offense the most. McCaffrey had 13 catches on 17 targets for 5 touchdowns last year. This year, Niners running backs have 3 combined receptions. And that is what I have said all along. I think it's what a lot of us have said. Between the 20s, the Niners offense was just fine with Jordan Mason. Where they missed 23 the most was in the red zone. That is the difference between why this offense went from a killer last year, leading the NFL in touchdowns, to struggling this year. It's because McCaffrey wasn't there. Even if they only use him in the red zone on Sunday, Vish, it would be a huge boost.
Yeah. And it's a great example of how the red zone separates the good players, because a lot of good players are very good between the 20s from the great ones who are able to execute and finish drives, right? Like, to me, the best Jerry Rice stat of all time, the stat that separates him from everyone else, is the 200 career touchdowns. The touchdown number to me is the universal number that makes him so insurmountably special. And that's what it is for Christian McCaffrey compared to the other 49ers weapons. Like, other than Trent Williams, him and Christian McCaffrey, they're the Hall of Famers on this offense. Maybe Kittle too, but they're not. There's a different level to the special, right? Like, Kittle isn't going to shitty Carolina and having a 1,000 season. Kittle isn't making 8 Pro Bowls straight in crappy ass Washington. Like, there's a different level of talent to Trent Williams, number 1 player in high school, number 4 overall pick, drafted when he was 20 years old up from Oklahoma, or Christian McCaffrey, who's a 4-star recruit, Heisman finalist, all these things. These are special, once in a decade type special athletes. McCaffrey is probably, other than Derrick Henry, the best running back of an era, which is a very renowned statement for most people. Like, he's probably going to be the all decades running back in the 20s, which is crazy to say, him and Derrick Henry. And that's a really, really big thing. And so when I see those things, Rob, and I see him coming back, and I see that they're going to have him in the red zone, like those impactful things. And then what you talked about, the 3rd and short, right? We saw it in the Rams-Seattle game, how difficult it is to make these 3rd, 4th down decisions when you can't block, where you can't trust the fact that you can block in front of you to get 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. And you contrast that to the Rams. McVay is not that aggressive, but they're very good on 3rd and 1 and 2nd and 1 and 4th and 1, because they can just hand it to Kyren Williams, and he's almost a guarantee to get them that 1 yard. It is a guarantee. And for Shanahan, we've talked about it so many times this year. Oh, they suck at 2nd and 1. They go 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1, and they punt on 4th and 1. Like, yes, that's a theme of sequence that you and I have talked about 6, 7, 8 times this year, probably. And that's because play calling becomes so much more difficult when you don't know that 1 yard is guaranteed. Now, if you know on 3rd and 1, you can always hand it for Christian McCaffrey and get that 1 yard. Now, 2nd and 1, maybe you drum up a shot play. You get more aggressive. Like the Rams on 1st and 10, they know they can hand it off to Kyren Williams and kick a field goal to lose the game or win the game, ice the game, take a quick shot, and Stafford saw it right away. He saw the corner pressed up and he went up top. He knew right off the play fake that's where he was going, and they won the game that way. Now, that's just an example, but the point is that 3rd and 1, guaranteeing that, because that's just what Christian McCaffrey does, that's going to make enormous impact. Also, Jordan Mason, man, I expect him to be so much better with less touches coming off of the bye. I thought he was completely worn out before the bye. I thought the Dallas game, like, he was missing holes. He wasn't running as effectively because he was not ready to be this guy this year. He was not ready to be this guy.
He said it after week 1. I don't know how Christian McCaffrey does this, By the way, first things first, Jerry Rice scored 208 touchdowns. Get it right.
Sorry.
Don't short the man.
Sorry, buddy. I know that's your favorite player. That's
Which
on
is
me.
such an absurd number. Just if you score 100 touchdowns, you're a Hall of Famer. Jerry Rice has 208. The next closest is Emmitt Smith with 175. So
Think about it. In 20 years, it's essentially 10 touchdowns a year. And I think any receiver that has 10 touchdowns in a season had a hell of a season. As a receiver on the outside to score 10 touchdowns in a year. And the thing that obviously made Jerry, not to make this a Jerry Rice show, the thing that made him the most impressive is a lot of these touchdowns were him scoring and hitting his head on the goalpost from, the 20. He's just taking a quick slant and going 80. He's taking a quick, bubble and he's going 90. Like, that's what he did. Like, unreal.
Do you know the closest active player to Jerry Rice in career touchdowns?
Is it Travis Kelce?
No, it would be Derrick Henry, who has.
Oh, just because he hit the 100 yesterday?
Derrick Henry's at 106 in his career.
Oh, the receiving. Okay, sorry.
208. So all Derrick Henry's got to do is have a Hall of Fame career starting now, and he'll tie Jerry Rice.
And he hit the 100 rushing last year. And like when he hit it, I was thinking like, wow, what a moment like for Derrick Henry to have this kind of longevity in this era as a running back. Like, this is insane. And you just poo-pooed his entire career achievement, Rob.
Take that, Derrick Henry. Vinny V, YouTube channel member, says, Vish, did you see Rob's new TV? It's a monster, like Christian McCaffrey's impact on the 49ers offense.
I was too busy blinded by the red shoes on Rob's ottoman. Like, who does that, man? Who puts those nasty-ass, stinky-ass shoes there?
I thought you would like it. It's an ottoman. It's actually made for feet. So there you go.
Feet, not shoes.
Same difference. I'm not licking the ottoman. It's fine. Christian McCaffrey back at practice. That's obviously very good. We're all very excited about that. Jauan Jennings back at practice. I am hearing that the 49ers are very happy with their wide receivers. And if Jennings is coming back, I don't think we're going to see the 49ers make a trade for a wide receiver, Vish. I don't think the 49ers are going to make a trade for anybody, quite frankly, by tomorrow's trade deadline. Modella Time 1999 says, I hope the Niners don't make any trades. Just ride with what they got and let the rookies play. I totally agree. And if Jennings is back and you have Pearsall and you have Cowing, you don't need Kendrick Bourne. You don't need random receiver off the
so I wouldn't mind random receiver off the streets. Maybe not Kendrick Bourne because we don't know. The guy hasn't played football in a very long time because of his injury.
He played Sunday.
Oh, how did he play?
4 catches, 40 yards.
Oh, shoot. Okay, I'll go watch the game just for the sake of the fact that they might trade
Kendrick
for him.
Bourne. Like, what's he going to do? Why does the 49ers need Kendrick
Bourne? 4 catches, 40 yards from Kendrick Bourne sounds like a pretty good game for Kendrick Bourne.
Why do we need that? Like, who's sitting there being like Jacob Cowing can't do that?
No, it's not for Jacob Cowing. It's just to have a depth veteran of a guy who can line up in all 3 spots if you need to and go and make a clutch catch, because they're in this funny situation now where they have Cowing, who's more of the slot, and then he lines up. Actually, I couldn't even tell you what positions Cowing lines up on. Whatever. But the point is, between Cowing, Pearsall, Debo, and Jennings, they don't have necessarily a true X receiver, which is why Conley gets so many snaps, because that was Brandon Ayuk's role. And then Conley is kind of the vertical speed X receiver guy. So that's why he gets snaps. Having a guy like Kendrick Bourne who can do all 3 of those things and maybe is more reliable, because I think Conley essentially proved to be unplayable, at least in my mind, given the performance he provided last week, with all due respect. I think that it adds more depth. Now, that doesn't need to be a guy. The reason I said like nobody good is because that shouldn't be a guy that comes in and plays in front of Pearsall or Cowing or Debo or Jennings. Those are your guys. Those are who you're going forward with. But it should be somebody that completes the room with a level of reliability where, hey, in a game, Cowing needs to line up as the F, and he hasn't really done that in practice. We can go to Bourne, and Bourne isn't going to necessarily let us down. Now, the problem is, I don't know if Bourne is that guy, and Trent Taylor is definitely not that guy. So don't go to him to do the job. But there are available guys. That's what Willie Snead kind of provided for them at the back end of this roster a little bit last year. I thought Conley was that kind of guy. Conley was horrible last week, so it's changed my perspective on that, with all due respect, not to quote Mark Jackson, but to quote Mark Jackson. So given all of those three things, Rob, I do think they could use one more guy, but it would have to be somebody that kind of settles into this perfect role of he supports the room. What Mo Sanu did for them. A wily veteran, played a lot of football. In a pinch, they might be able to go to him, but he's more there to help and support the other guys. He's not there to come in and give you 35, 40 snaps and 15, 20 routes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sitting here, worried that the season hinges on friggin' Kendrick Bourne or someone like
No,
it.
the season doesn't hinge, but you want to have some sort of more veteran presence, right, around your younger receivers. Because it's always good. Guys who have been in that situation who can kind of give advice.
I got Debo and Ayuk and Jennings.
Ayuk is hurt.
So what? He's still there.
And,
he can still talk.
And Debo plays a pretty unique role in this offense. And I'm not going to lie. That's just not who I want them relying upon.
Well, yeah.
With all due respect.
I don't know. I think it's sometimes things I feel like take root. People just say stuff, and then if you repeat
No, I agree. I think the concept of them needing a receiver is somebody just saying things. And I don't think that receiver is Kendrick Bourne either. I think that's also people drawing connections from who's previously gone with Shanahan.
Right.
I also don't think this is similar to when they brought in Sanders, because they needed Sanders to be a number one receiver on that team. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they just need a veteran at the end of this roster. In the case that Debo goes and gets hurt, they can go to that guy and say, go play this spot. In the case that Pearsall goes and gets hurt, he can go play that spot. In the case that Jennings goes and gets hurt, he can go be the slot. But at the same time, he's also not playing in front of Pearsall, Cowing, Jennings, or Debo. And that guy is usually available on the street. I don't know who the available receivers in the market are. I think people are just naming Kendrick Bourne as that guy. I think that guy could probably be a little bit better than Kendrick Bourne.
Right. If his name wasn't Kendrick Bourne and he hadn't been mentioned in the Ayuk stuff over the summer, would anybody be bringing him up now?
Right.
I don't think so. And
Strawberry Reacts is nailing it right now. Ronnie Bell is kind of that guy on this offense right now. He's kind of the utility, but that's the point, right? He's the utility go-to in terms of knowing all three spots. That's why they keep putting him back on the field, and everybody keeps getting mad.
Teach it to somebody else then.
Well, that sign somebody. That's what I'm saying. Don't rely on Ronnie Bell. Have a veteran for that.
Why can't they teach that to Jacob Cowing?
He's not big enough to play all three spots, man. He's 5'8".
That's
Ronnie
fine.
Bell. Like it's what?
How tall is Ronnie Bell?
Huh?
How tall is Ronnie Bell?
6'1", 6 foot. He's a much bigger frame guy.
He stinks, though, Vish. That's the thing. He's terrible. He's 6 feet 190.
Rob, not everybody can be Jerry Rice. Some people have to fit in the league to play a role.
I'm not
Ronnie
saying
Bell is making it at the end of the roster.
Ugh. I have talked about this a lot. It seems more relevant now that the Avengers are assembling in San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan, after the bye, historically has been not good, not very good. He's been great after the bye. He's won
unbelievable
% of his games in his two worst years, 2018 and 2020. He had starting quarterback injuries. So
and the 18 one is kind of finicky because they played Tampa Bay right out of their bye, and that was when Reuben Foster got he brought a girl into the thing, and then they cut him like the day before the game or whatever. So it was like a tricky situation. They got lambasted versus Tampa Bay. Like the team went through a funny situation. And then, like you said, 2020, the quarterback was hurt. They also spent half the season or like a month of that rest of the season in Arizona. So there you go. Like those are two situations where they went through very unique mental things for their roster that definitely probably affected their record.
So you combine the fact that Shanahan is very good at making adjustments with the fact that they are getting Christian McCaffrey back and maybe Jauan Jennings and maybe, as healthy as they've been in quite some time. The stage is set for another run like this. And Vish, I'm not going to lie. They probably need to go, 7-2, something like that, 8-3 or 6-3, something like that after the bye, if they're going to win the division and make the playoffs in the NFC.
100%. And so there's two things with this, right? There's two things that happens to them after the bye. Usually after the bye, Shanahan kind of has a really good idea of how defenses have been defending him that year, and it's specifically in the run game. And they basically unlock the holy grail, this is how we're going to run the ball for 150 yards in every game from here on out at the bye. In 2021, it was put Deebo Samuel at running back and have that unlock a level of explosiveness. Christian McCaffrey was that guy, coming into the Chiefs game, trading for him. Last year, they were a buzzsaw before the bye. They were a buzzsaw after the bye, and there was no change to that. But they find a way to essentially run the ball, and they unlock it doesn't matter what you do. Shanahan's going to get 5 yards a carry, 150 yards, 30 rushes. And in November and December, it's really hard to freaking lose if you're pulling that off. But the thing that complements that for them to win winter football games after the bye is an excellent defense, usually combined with the deep defensive line, acquiring somebody around this time at the trade deadline to add to that depth. And they go 8-9 deep, and they have 8 or 9 very good players. This year, it's not a very good defensive line. They have one special guy in Bosa who's had a pretty outstanding season, if you ask me. They have a couple of serviceable guys who occasionally play well around him. They have a high-effort guy in Sam O who's doing something. The defensive line isn't necessarily good in terms of rushing as a unit. They're not great with their rush depths. There's some technical issues with them that's also not as great as their talent, so they're not playing as clean. And my question is, not being so long-winded, even though I've already been very long-winded, to you, Rob, essentially is, okay, we know Shanahan's going to unlock the run game. We're optimistic about all of these people returning on offense. That, to me, is a given. The offense didn't have too many issues anyway. The offense, to me, was probably a B, B minus, B plus going into the bye. I think they're going to be an A after the bye. I think that elevation is going to happen. Yeah. The defense, which I thought has been playing better, but I think there's still a severe talent restriction. That's why leads look so quick and flimsy against this defense, because it's so easy to start isolating certain players on this defense one-on-one and pick at them. Devondre Campbell, Isaac Yiadom when he needs to play. Like, it's easy to isolate and attack these guys. They're able to get back into games. So without having this, I would say, kick-ass killer defensive line to close games, can they maintain this? Because this is the first time they essentially, to me, the defense probably is C in terms of talent, played like a B between, if you add up all their weeks up to the bye, especially the last few weeks before the bye, they played very well. But I think a B is the maximum you can get from them, because they are a C talent to me. And that B is because of the 2 Hall of Famers.
But I think that better offense will make the defense better. I agree that the offense is clearly the better unit. It's clearly the strength of the team. That was not the case in 2019. It was not the case in other Shanahan years. This year, it is clear the defense is not the strength of the team. But if you've got an offense that, number one, can score more touchdowns in the red zone, which clearly there's room to improve there. Number two, can just avoid the just sputtering that seems to occur in the fourth quarter of some of these games where they can't even get a first down. If you can just get to the offense to the level where they can pick up a couple first downs, even on drives they don't score, and they can help with the field position, right? And give the defense a bigger margin for error. I think that is like a hidden sort of strength that could help in the second half of the season. I think that is why the offense has the potential to help the defense along a little bit. You mentioned the Niners in November. Nick Wagner tweeted this out. Apparently Kyle Madsen tweeted it out. Shanahan's awesome in November. They are 9-1 since 2021 in November, while averaging almost 28 points per game and allowing 13 points a game and having a plus 13 turnover margin.
When real football starts, baby.
The best teams get better as the calendar flips to November, December, January. That is something historically that Kyle Shanahan has done in his tenure as 49ers head coach. They have to cut down on the turnovers. That's another thing that Christian McCaffrey can help with if he's there. I just, everything is set up for the Niners to make this run.
The division sucks.
Yes, I know I'm being like Johnny Homer over here. I fully acknowledge it, but like,
okay,
these are the facts. These are the facts, right? Like, nothing I've said is unfair or unreasonable. Would you agree?
No, I think you're right on it. And I look at the division. I think the division sucks. I think Arizona could sneak into the playoffs, but that's not because they're a good team. That's because they're letting 7 teams into the playoffs now. I think Seattle is just a bad football team. Their offensive line is horrible. Their front seven has been banged up. I think they've been hanging around in games. And Geno was almost Jameis Winston yesterday because he simultaneously kept the Rams in the game while keeping Seattle in the game. Because every drive would be either a Geno great throw leading them down with an unreal throw to Jackson Smith, leading them down the field, or it would be Geno leading them down the field and then throwing the dumbest interception you've ever seen to keep the Rams alive. It was a Jameis Winston classic from Geno Smith. And then the Rams, the Rams are a level of dangerous because if the game is really close down the stretch, like the Niners game was, Stafford gives them an element and an advantage, and McVay is a really good coach. The Rams are not good. Rams are missing talent in major spots. The Rams defense sucks. The Rams defense is terrible. The Rams defense secondary is horrible. Ahkello Witherspoon
defensive line. Jared Verse is a problem.
Yeah, they're big inside. Braden Fisk is good too.
Seattle running the ball right up the gut on the 4th down in overtime when they decide to forego the field goal and try to get a convert on 4th down. Like, that's the area where the Rams want you to attack. Seattle just ran it right to it.
Right. With a horrible offensive line that hadn't had any success on 4th and short or any sort of short distance versus the Rams all day.
Yeah, it just baffling. I agree. I think the Rams are dangerous just because they have a head coach that knows what he's doing and they have a really good quarterback. They have, to me, probably the best quarterback in the NFC. I said it before the season started. Matthew Stafford is really freaking good, man. And that game that the Rams won, that's the game the Seahawks used to win all the time at home, right? Defense stands on its head. Russ gets the ball back, throwing moon balls, making plays, and Seattle steals the victory in a game they had no business winning. They used to do that all the time, and now it's being done to them in their own house, and I am here for it, Vish.
Yeah, I love the way you described that because I didn't catch that parallel, and you're right. Seattle would sneak games that they had no business sneaking. But I think coming back to the Rams, I'm probably with you on Stafford being the best quarterback in the NFC. Funnily enough, Atlanta might have the second best quarterback in the NFC because that guy is balling again.
The Kirk Cousins rumors to San Francisco will never
keep going, right? But the thing with the Rams and that makes you fear them isn't that they're good now. It's the confidence that they might get from winning all of these games that they shouldn't be winning. Like the Rams season should be over, if that makes sense, right? Like where the 49ers and Rams seasons are so opposite, even though I think they both are 4-4, is that the 49ers are a total disappointment for being 4-4. The Rams have essentially treaded water through disaster to be 4-4. And it sounds crazy to say, right? Because the 49ers lost Christian McCaffrey. The 49ers had Brandon Ayuk go down to a devastating injury and all of that. But it's because when you look at the actual games, like even with all those bad things, the 49ers had no business losing to the Cardinals and the 49ers had no business losing to the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams have just won 2 or 3 games they had no business winning in the inverse. And that's where when you look at these two things, the Rams season, all they need to do is just get a little hot and a little confident. That's what happened last year. And Stafford has given them that life because they've won a few games that they shouldn't have. And they could sneak the back end of this division if the 49ers don't do their job. Because they're not going to go away. Because they've proven in this, because of the quarterback they have, they're not going to go away. But they also shouldn't have business competing with the 49ers because this division stinks and they're not as good as the 49ers. But that's up to the 49ers.
3 weeks ago, the Rams were 1-4 and they were selling Cooper Kupp. Like that was I'm old enough to remember the Cooper Kupp trade rumors that the Rams were calling teams trying to trade Cooper Kupp. And now
to be fair, were they really trying to trade him? They were looking for more than Devontae Adams. They were,
But the fact that it was out there, like, look, you know how that goes, Vish. Usually if a team wants to trade a guy, but they don't want to tick the player off, what do they say? Well, they're listening to offers on Cooper Kupp, but they're not out there shopping him. But if teams call, they'll listen, right? This was not that. This was the Rams are shopping Cooper Kupp. And now they've won 3 straight. They're tied with the Niners. They have the tiebreaker in the division.
The Cooper Cup thing is irrelevant. The one thing I'll say is the difference with this one is I feel like the Rams just operate a little different from other teams. So I could totally see the Rams being like, okay, we're freaking 2-4. If somebody gives us a second and a third for Cooper Cup right now, like we're 2-4. Like we don't need Cooper Cup. We need the second and the third. Like see a Cooper Cup. But you know what I mean? So let's call up and see if somebody's actually willing to do this in a crappy receiver market. But I digress. The point is irrelevant, even though I already made it after mentioning it's irrelevant. The main thing with the Rams is that they're a threat to the 49ers because they're surviving in these parts of their season. But I also think they should be an example to the 49ers on what having a steady quarterback and coach can offer you in terms of being in tumultuous situations. And I do feel like in the 49ers case, that is still a little bit yet to be discovered, because I think them being 4-4 through that stretch in the early part of the season, the way they won those games felt like they won them when everything was supported. It didn't feel like they were stealing a game that they shouldn't have in that. And that's my measure almost of when you have that quarterback that's really making the difference. Obviously, Purdy is a very good player. That part's been established. But we're talking about the margins of making that small difference. It's winning games that you shouldn't win,
Completely
essentially,
agree with
right?
you.
Like winning the game that the Rams won versus the 49ers.
Yep.
And that's also a maturation for Brock Purdy, because Stafford wasn't winning games he shouldn't have in his third year starting.
That's true.
Although he did throw for 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, and led the Detroit Lions, who had never won anything in 5 years and were 0-16 and all of that, to the playoffs. So he did something, but
I remember talking with Mel Kiper when I was back at ESPN about Stafford and when he was coming out in the draft. And I was like, how good is his arm? And Mel Kiper said to me, and this was off the air. This was not on the air. He said, John Elway has the greatest quarterback arm I've ever evaluated. And I think Stafford might be better, which is crazy because John Elway used to throw the ball so hard when it would hit receivers in the chest. The point of the football would leave a mark on the receiver's chest.
Right, the cross.
The shoulder pads. They called it the Elway cross. Exactly. So to think that Matthew Stafford's arm could be better than that is just absurd. But that's what he told me. And look, the dude is balling right now and good for the Rams. This is a 49 show, so I want to keep it.
He was a silly thrower back then too. For me, where I really started to appreciate his career was 14, 15, 16, 17 with Jim Caldwell. Like, there's a lot of guys with his talent. Not a lot of guys, excuse me. That was a very wrong statement. There's very few guys with his talent, but there's also very few guys with his talent who end up actually controlling the ball well enough and refining their technique in the position to become very good quarterbacks. And I think that's what has made Stafford a little bit different, is that, yeah, he has this one-of-one arm, but like he really got better and honed in his skills at playing quarterback and playing from the pocket and improving.
Yes. Let's not make this a Matthew Stafford show. Right?
I love the guy, Rob. I love the guy. The guy used to show up on my TV at 12 o'clock. That would be the game I would watch. And I'd be like, why the fuck does Detroit have a quarterback this good? Like, the NFL needs to make some calls and get this guy out of Detroit. Like, Detroit doesn't deserve anything quality, especially after what the NBA is doing to my Pistons.
They stunk for a decade, and you had the number one pick. That's how they got him. Vinny V says 49ers go undefeated in the division the rest of the way, lose to the Packers, Bills, and Lions, wins against the Bears and Dolphins. 6-3. 49ers win a division in week 17 against Arizona at home. Book it. That's
Green Bay should be a winnable game, man.
Here's the thing. Jordan Love kind of sucks. Like, everyone gets, I said it, Levin and I did an NFL show today, this afternoon. We launched the gold standard, just general NFL show. We did like a weekly recap. And I said it today. Like, we get enamored with throw porn on Twitter. Look at this clip of Jordan Love dropping back and flicking his wrist and falling away. Beautiful ball placement. Oh my God, it was such a good throw. That's not what makes you a good quarterback. That helps, certainly, and it's an awesome thing to have in your bag. but you can't
You
sell
didn't think he played well yesterday? Because I thought he played well, frankly. I could see he was hurt.
sometimes.
I thought the conditions were really tough. Their receivers dropped a lot of passes. I'm not telling you I
Boo-hoo.
think Jordan Love is a top 10 or top 5 quarterback, or I'm ready to anoint him. So I think you might be maybe saying that you don't feel like he lives up to the narrative that you feel like is portrayed about him, which is a different conversation. But just yesterday, I thought he played well. I didn't think he played poorly.
Sometimes being a quarterback is all about the worst thing that you do. And Jordan Love still just has horrible
Oh
interception,
yeah.
horrible decisions.
He has the gene, but it's not just like he like, what is
Circum
short
Okay.
circuits and just panics. It's something pretty outrageously stupid is going to happen. And he had the one where he's rolling out of the pocket and he just drops the ball as he's going by. It's like, whoa. I agree with that. I agree with that. But you're coming to the Green Bay 49ers matchup. So let's focus on that, right?
Well,
That's
that's
not
what
just a
I'm
love
saying.
matchup.
No, it's not. But like he's still the same guy that threw the season-ending pick against the 49ers last year. So
Yeah.
honestly, like coming into the season, I was like, oh man, that Green Bay game in Green Bay, like that's a scary situation. Now I kind of approach it almost like I approached the Stafford game. Because Matt Stafford will still give you a couple chances to take the football away. He had a throw before Stafford did, before the game-winning touchdown,
The
where
Tyler Johnson one?
he puts the ball out there, and the Seahawks defender is standing there waiting to pick the ball off. And I think the announcer even says, like, oh my God. And at the last second, the Rams receiver steps right in front of him and makes the catch for the reception. I was like, woo. Like,
Yeah, it's a crossing route. He trusted his guy. It's funny you make that comparison because Love actually, in a lot of ways, reminds me of kind of an unhinged, like very early career Detroit Stafford. But I would say I think this matchup is favorable for the 49ers because they can run the football against Green Bay. Houston just did it 2 weeks ago. People focused on how crappy CJ Stroud played. And that's because they're missing in the fact that Green Bay has added all the exotic things that people are giving Brian Flores credit for in Minnesota. Jeff Halfley is doing a lot of those same things. Oh, they're showing blitz zero and coming out and playing spot drop Tampa too. Green Bay does those things too. Xavier McKinney is having an outstanding season. Green Bay's secondary is good, but Green Bay can be run the ball against. Houston showed that they can run the football against them. The problem is Houston is unable to win with their run game alone. The 49ers have no issues winning games with their run game alone. I don't look at Green Bay. The Lions, that's a terrifying matchup. I think the
yes,
Lions could steamroll the 49ers, if I'm being honest. Like, I think it could get ugly fast out of nowhere.
they
But
steamroll everybody.
yeah, but Green Bay, that's a and the other thing with Green Bay is they're 50-50 on who shows up. Some weeks Green Bay will show up on a 12 o'clock against Tennessee and look like the most unbeatable team. And then you put them in a big game in a big spot, and their offense is off rhythm. The receivers are making mistakes. They're having a lot of penalties. Their defense is extending drives because of penalties. Green Bay is a little bit of a young, undisciplined team. They have that syndrome, for lack of a better term, and because it kind of encompasses everything I'm trying to say about Green Bay. So I don't look at that game as a loss for the night. I look at that as a guaranteed win. I look at the second Arizona game as tougher because Arizona is just going to keep running it with James Conner. And any team that's just going to stick with the run against the 49ers is a problem.
Yep. Even when the 49ers shut down James Conner in the first half of that game, they stuck with it. And the second half, he ran all over them. Look, the only game that I think I would say definitely I feel confident is going to be a loss in the second half is the Lions game. I just think the Lions are so good right now. And they do the thing the 49ers are worst at, which is run the ball. So that's the only one. The Bills game would be extremely tough, but I see a path to victory there for the 49ers. It's possible. It's going to be tough, but it's possible. Right now, I think that they are going to stomp the Buccaneers. I think they're going to stomp the Seahawks at home. They could easily beat the Packers. The Bills game is going to be tough. I had the Bears game down as a loss, but they look completely lost right now. They just look like they don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I think the Bears game talent-wise could be a tricky matchup, but that season might have unraveled, like totally
Yes.
unraveled, where like they fired the coach and stuff by the time the
Dude,
Niners play up. Yeah.
they had a guy, I think it was Elijah Moore, just left the field in the middle of a play.
DJ Moore, yeah.
DJ Moore, sorry.
Yeah.
He just walked off. And like, I don't
Yeah.
know if he was hurt or whatever, but I've never seen a player literally just walk off while a play was happening. I've never seen that ever. So that
they're too Hollywood for Chicago, and they're definitely too Hollywood for Eberflus. They need a bigger personality coach. It's funny. They really should have gone all in on Jim Harbaugh this year, man. Jim Harbaugh is made for Chicago.
Yeah, well, that didn't happen. The Rams
loser Bears.
We know the Rams, the Niners can beat the Rams. I should have beaten them earlier. They didn't, but clearly Shanahan still more often than not knows what McVay is going to do before he does it. The Dolphins were in that was their season last week. They lost. Like that was their death null. I don't know what the word is I'm trying to say, but
nail in the coffin.
They're cooked. The Lions game obviously is going to be very, very difficult. And the Cardinals week 18, which could mean something, which probably will mean something, but like, again, certainly a winnable game for the 49ers. It's all there. It is all there. I'm so hyped for the second half of the season. And I swear to God, I never promise you 100% accuracy on this show, but I always promise you 100% authenticity. If I didn't think the 49ers had a shot, I would tell you. I really would. I've never been hesitant to rip this coach, this team, or any player. But that's not where I am right now. In my heart of hearts, I think that they can make a run and get back to the playoffs this year. And if you get to the playoffs, Vish, the season starts anew. That's the Niners' goal. Just get to the dance, and we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, because the funny part of all of this is, yeah, the Niners have like 80 flaws that makes them a flawed football team, which they very much are. Everybody else looks pretty beatable this year. That's the problem, right? Like even the teams that have a drastically better record than the 49ers, we look at the matchup on paper and we're like, yeah, any given Sunday, you could throw the Niners and get a shot against them, except for Detroit. And so when you're essentially looking at it like that, it's hard not to look at the second half of the roster or of the season with the Niners seemingly peaking, them having the return of their best player, igniting them. And you look at Shanahan's record in these situations, you have to think, okay, this is where they're going to turn around their season. This is where they're going to shoot for the stars. This is where they're going to really make their move. Now, I think what's more likely, given the 2024 49ers, is they do it, but they do it in a way that makes it more difficult than it should be, which means one of these games that we have put down as a must win, they're going to win or they're going to lose, and they're going to lose in ugly fashion. And they're probably going to sneak one of the Lions, Bills, Packers games that my guy called, probably the ones they're going to lose. On paper, those are the three toughest. I think Green Bay is probably the one I would pick them to sneak, but you never know with Buffalo, and you never know. I think Buffalo's defense is a tough matchup, too, for their offense. I'll say that as well.
Buffalo is tough, man. Buffalo,
it's a good team.
It's supposed to be a down year for the Bills.
Right. And it'll be December. We'll see Brock Purdy throw in that wind. We'll get to see some things.
Yep. And that's, that's something too with Brock. Matt Barrows had a line, and he had a column in The Athletic, and it was like second half predictions for the 49ers. And his prediction was if Brock Purdy plays the second half of the season like he played the first half of the season, he's going to get that market rate contract after the year. And so I looked and I was like, let me just see. Do you realize Brock Purdy has 10 passing touchdowns right now? Like if Brock Purdy duplicates what he did, he's going to throw for 4,400 touchdowns or 4,400 yards with 20 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. You know what that is? That's kind of like Alex Smith type of numbers, Jimmy Garoppolo type of number. Like that is not what would fill me with warm and fuzzies if I'm about to give a guy, $60 million a year. I need Brock.
That's pretty close to Stafford stats this year, right? I think Stafford has 5 passing touchdowns, 6 passing touchdowns, 4 picks.
I need way better numbers from Brock Purdy in the second half of the season. Way better numbers. Yeah, Stafford's at 9 touchdowns, 6 picks right now, and almost 2,000 passing yards. Jeez, I didn't realize he only had 9 touchdowns. That's crazy.
And two of them have been coming, or a bunch of the touchdowns have been coming in the last 2 weeks. I don't look at it from the stats because I feel like he's proven that he's good enough to be the next quarterback that deserves to get paid. So I think we're operating in a reality, and I think Matt Barrows is writing from this story from this standpoint that, yeah, he's essentially proven to this point, if he stopped playing now, that he is good enough to be the next guy that gets paid. If you look at the last guy that got paid, if you look at the history of guys that have gotten paid, he's past that threshold. So the realistic thing is
necessarily by my team. That's all I care about.
So there you go, right? That's the distinction you're drawing here. The reality is he's proven he's good enough to be the next guy that's gotten paid. In fact, that probably happened at the end of last year. This year is almost just confirmation bias to that, which is why you're bringing up the stats through the first 7-8 weeks. But Matt Barrows is essentially saying, yeah, he proved essentially that he's as good as he was last year. So therefore, they're probably going to pay him. And so when you look at that, what you're really looking at is he one of those quarterbacks that you feel like once you give him $65 million, your team is going to remain in contention, your team is going to be winning, your team is going to win the Super Bowl possibly with, because there's very limited amount of guys that have won making over 14% of their salary cap. Usually that's reserved for the Bradys and the Mahomes and those sort of guys. That's yet to be determined. I would say that this season hasn't necessarily shown that he's one of those guys so far, but he's still got a career to play out. And I agree with you on, if you're judging whether the first half of this season has shown if he's one of those guys, well, those guys are the top 3-4 quarterbacks in the NFL. Those guys are the guys I project to win MVPs. I'm not sure he's one of those guys yet. But he's definitely one of the guys. He's shown he's the next guy to get paid. You can't look at the history of guys that got paid and then look at what he's done and not say he's not earned it already.
I hope Brock Purdy gets the bag this offseason. Do I hope my team is the one that gives it to him? I could go either way right now. I really could. And I've said I wanted to see 2 full years as a starter before I made that whole distinction, and I'm still there. I'm still there.
But I feel like what you're saying though, right, is like you're saying pay him a certain amount. But the problem is this.
No, I'm not saying you can't. If you're going to pay him, you got to pay him market.
Okay. You're on the same page as me then, because paying him is essentially binary. It's not, I'd pay him, but I'd only pay him 45. I wouldn't pay him 55. It's a binary proposition. If you pay him, that means he's getting top of the market. That's how it works.
Yes. There's no chance he takes a contract where the number per year starts with a 4. Just
no. I mean, he shouldn't. He's
correct.
The next guy to get paid, and he's earned it just as much as the last guy did.
You're he would have a terrible agent if his agent ever took that deal. For 100% agree.
Okay, my bad. Then we're on the same page. Continue.
Yes. That's why my whole thing. That's why I'm hesitant to make the decision yet, because I know if you pay him what you are paying. If you told me right now you can get him for $40 million a year, I'd be like, hell yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that. I'd sign that deal right now, but that's not what it's going to be. But and look, this is what's going to happen with Brock, right? McCaffrey will come back. The Niners offense will look good. They'll start winning. People will be like, oh, well, now that he's got the Avengers back, look, the Niners offense looks so much better. So we'll still be in the Brock Purdy loop of death. Avengers come back. He looks good. He's a scheme merchant. Guy gets injured. He doesn't look as good. People that's the circle that we're in. We'll still be in that. That's fine. But you know what? I don't even care if that's the discourse that starts over again, because it means the 49ers are winning again.
That discourse is funny, right? But let's keep that discourse away from our show. We'll keep it to mine and your discourse. I feel like where we are with Brock Purdy, and the second part of it is a little bit unknown because he's got so much career to play out. But the first part is I think he's already proven that he's way too good not to be paid. And when I say way too good not to be paid, I look at quarterbacks that, okay, would I pay that guy? Do I think that's going to be your starter for 6-7 years? That's the first conversation to me, because to me, the threshold of a guy you pay is Kirk Cousins. That's the bare minimum. Year in and year out, nobody's displacing him. You're not going and signing Sam Darnold one year and he's going to start over Kirk Cousins. He's going to be your undisputed starter. He's going to start week in, week out. He's going to produce. He's going to play quarterback at professional capabilities, but he can't offer you much beyond that. That, to me, is the threshold of getting paid, right? Brock's there above that. You look at the numbers, you look at all the metrics, he's right there to being paid. The second question is, once he gets paid, okay, he's too good enough to get paid, but is he good enough to now you win because he got paid? And that's the Mahomes, that's the Lamar, it's the Josh Allen, that's the TBD with Brock. And it's okay if he fits into the first part, because if I'm being honest and not being a hypocrite, there's a lot of quarterbacks that I didn't fit into the second category, where I thought they were good enough to be paid. I thought they were great players, but they weren't guys that teams won because of when they made a lot of money, right? Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford, Carson Palmer, Tony Romo. In my mind, these were all quarterbacks you could win a Super Bowl with, but they were the exact criteria that I just named. Dak Prescott is the exact criteria I just named. With Brock Purdy, it's TBD, but right now he seems to fit within that. But I also feel like he's too good, because you don't just find 6, 7, 8-year, 9-year starters, guys that can start like that anywhere. And it's a damned if you do, maybe damned if you don't. But
Well,
you're
and
better off taking that shot with that guy than not.
there's another part of this that doesn't get mentioned. It's always, well, if you pay Brock, he's got to be able to win with a lesser roster. Not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you do what the Niners did in the draft this year, and you have another year that's similar to that, or maybe slightly less successful, the roster won't get that much worse around Brock Purdy. And then it's not that big a deal that he's making $60 million.
It's not talent. It's the veteran gamesmanship of having players who do the right things to win games, right? Like, it's that price difference between having this young roster. It's like what the Rams had to go through last year, where you have these young players do dumb things in execution moments because they're still learning the strategy of winning football games and stuff like that. That's the distinction. Because you're right, the talent is relatively arbitrary with how roster building works in the NFL. The most highest paid roster does not necessarily guarantee the most talented in the NFL. In fact, theoretically in the NFL, you could assemble the least highest paid roster and have it be the most talented if those resources are utilized correctly. So I'm 100% with you on that point, but it's the second part of having like the veteran and the reliability and the depth of having more seasoned players versus having to rely on unknowns. And unknowns is where you're now dealing with situations. And as we've seen in the NFL, essentially, once you have a quarterback good enough, a lot of these games are pretty close. We're talking about a few situational opportunities that essentially decide the game. That's what you and I talk about every Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And that difference can be the difference between having a guy that's seasoned, that's played a lot, that might know what to do in that moment, versus having a first, second year rookie that hasn't played a lot of games. This is their first time dealing with that moment and stuff like that. But that's also where you hope a leadership of a Brock Purdy gets guys up to speed. That's why you're paying him a lot of money. So it's an interesting situation. I agree with you, though. I 100% agree with your point. You're right.
The Niners are going to play the Bucks off a short week. Tampa Bay is actually beating Kansas City right now, 7-3 on Monday Night Football. Hey,
how long
maybe
do you think that lasts?
Who knows? Maybe Tampa gets a nice win,
Yeah,
and
right.
then they have an emotional letdown against the 49ers. I'm going to find
You
a
know
way.
what the great thing is, though? You know what the great thing is? NFL fans can rejoice.
What?
The last remaining undefeated team, I think, hasn't won the Super Bowl in like, I don't know how many years.
Well, good, because let's face it, the Chiefs have had enough damn winning. I will find a way, though, to twist whatever happens into it being good for the 49ers, because I'm on cloud nine, man. I'm on cloud nine with McCaffrey coming back and Greenlaw getting close to coming back and Jennings coming back. And like you said,
it's there, man.
It's
It
there.
is there.
It's there. And if we can't be happy now, we'll never be happy. You got to enjoy the ride along the way.
And the buzzsaw doesn't have Aiden Hutchinson, right? Like, if the buzzsaw had Aiden Hutchinson,
they still look good, man. Do you know?
Oh, the Niners have no shot at stopping their run game. And I think that's why I have such an issue with that matchup. And even Green Bay, that's the one thing, man. Like, they had no success running it against Detroit, but Green Bay has games where they look unstoppable running the football. And if that happens, the Niners are, you know what, Rob, you need a little more work. The Niners are fucked.
Oh, jeez. Thank you for just throwing in one more bloop before we wrap it up.
What were you gonna say? I saw you had something to say that I extended it just so you'd have to swallow your words a couple more times.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I was going to say that Jared Goff has thrown 30 straight completions to Amon-Ra St. Brown. The last 30 times he has targeted him, he has completed the ball. Jared Goff has caught a touchdown from Amon-Ra St. Brown more recently than he has thrown an incompletion to Amon-Ra.
That is nuts. But it's different now that Demo Lenore is going to match up with them in the slot, right? That's a good thing.
They are cooking in Detroit. You know, this is the comfort that I have told myself is, well, they're peaking too soon. They're too good too soon. There's no way they can keep this up through the rest of it. That's the only thing I have to tell myself about the Lions, because they look like the only complete football team in the NFL.
They look like the 90s Cowboys.
In
a different way.
That's upsetting.
Maybe they don't run it like that, or they don't play defense like that. But just in terms of, they seem to be able to, like, Goff is completing all these passes. Goff is throwing the ball 20 times a game in the modern NFL, 21 times a game.
And it's short and it's they're scheming it up, which good for them. It's working. But
but they turn around. It's like the Cowboys in the sense that they just turn it around and hand it, and that's 5 yards. You know what I mean? Like, what do you do? And they go for it on every fucking fourth down. There you go, Rob. There's one more for you. So you're telling me they have 4 downs to get 10 yards, and they can run it for 5 times every time they run it? Guys, we're all not football people, but we all did math. Like, the math ain't mathing with that one, because they dominate the clock. They have 4 downs to get 10 yards. They get 5 yards a rush. Like,
it looks really good right now, but we have all seen teams that look really good in October and November that don't end up doing it in January. So
you gotta throw them off their game script, man.
It's a long way to go. And you know what? We're going to be here for the ride. We hope you join us. If this is your first time watching the show, thank you. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're live every single day. We're live after every single 49ers game. We do a 5-minute 49ers news update every morning that gets you up to speed with everything happening with the team. Give us a shot here at the Gold Standard Podcast Network. I promise you, we will earn your time. Please do, because a lot of people watching are first-time watchers, and I appreciate that. Thank you for coming by. Trust me, you're hopping on board right when it's about to get really good and really fun.
It is getting good, because I'll leave us with one more prediction, because I think there's one thing about this Super Bowl, and I think there's one kind of team that can disrupt the run that the Lions are going on. You need a Giants style team, a quarterback freaking playing out of his mind clutch, and then just a defensive line rushing the passer. Look, Baltimore is a team to watch in this trade deadline. The 49ers are a team to watch in this trade deadline. Buffalo is a team to watch in this trade deadline. Why do I pick these 3 teams? They could be that style team if they add a second rusher. All of them just need something to their defensive lines to be that style of team. A defensive line, ooh, come on. You get a good defensive, you get an Azeez Ojulari. Come on, Rob. John Lynch, make the calls. This is what we need. This is what the 49ers need. That's the kind of team that can win it this year. There's not really that, just, oh my God, you can't stop them type team. And if you get hot at the right time and you can rush the freaking passer, you got a shot. It's the only issue with the Niners.
Story 4x4ing says, any trade news? John Lynch did an interview with Tim Kawakami. He still made it seem like they're not really doing anything. Albert Breer, I think, in his Monday morning quarterback column said that the price for Zadarius Smith that's being talked about is a 4th-round pick. If that's all it takes?
No, that's steep. I mean, that's steep for his age and everything. But honestly, if I was you, if I looked at the landscape, and this is year by year, right? Like, for example, 3 weeks ago, I did not think the 49ers had as good a roster as they've had in the last few years. I still believe that. But I also believe they're in a worse NFL than they've been, in fact, even in the last few years. Like, I think there's a clear landscape for them this year, because I think just about every team is winnable for them, or every game is winnable. When you look at it like that, yeah, I'd send a 4th-round pick, because Z Smith, his ability to rush outside and inside, it would change this team.
But like Azeez Ojulari, he's young. He's not, 30 years old. He's 24 years old. I'd give up a 4th-round pick for a good pass rusher that's 24 years old.
Right, and I can franchise next year.
Like, I would consider it if I were the 49ers. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen. We'll see. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern is the
I'm
trade.
sure they're considering it, but I'm assuming that if it doesn't happen, it's likely because they're unable to find a price. If there's one thing about the 49ers, they aren't necessarily quiet about trying to address their issues. Now, they might address them in the wrong way, like they might completely screw up by giving up 3 first-round picks to try and get a quarterback, but they did try and get a quarterback, right? Like, they acknowledged that that guy sucked the same way we did. So they know their issues and they address them. This defensive line stinks. And Lee Bing asked, why would the Giants trade him? He's on the last year of his contract. They just signed and traded big money for Brian Burns. And then they have top 5 overall pick Kayvon Thibodeau still on the roster. So what are they going to do with Ojulari? Probably not pay him. So at least get a pick for him. Unless you feel confident he's walking for a third.
Right. Frank Tavares, YouTube channel member, says, why does Rob write down every time Vish drops an F-bomb? Because I bleep out the swears for the audio podcast. Because I don't ever want somebody to say, I want to listen to the gold standard, but my kid's in the car and they swear, so I can't put it on. I never want to give people a reason not to listen to us. So I bleep out the swears.
You know what my friend Tom, let's call him Tom, told me. Tom said, I want to listen to the Gold Standard podcast, but now my kid thinks he can walk around in our house with his disgusting shoes on.
Hey, you know what? Maybe that kid will learn something. Just saying.
I heard Tom has thrown away 2 Ottomans this year.
This is one more question I wanted to get to. Now I can't find it in the chat. I apologize. So there you go. That was it.
What was it about?
I don't even remember. Maybe it was the Frank Tavares question. But thank you again, everybody. Enjoy Monday Night Football.
What Astro said, come for stats, stay for 11.
Well, that's just propaganda. We're not going to address that by any.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to say it out loud for the show.
I just want to say this too, really quick. I'm not going to dive into it, but tomorrow's election day. Please vote. I don't care who you vote for. Well, I do care, but I'm not telling you who to vote for. Well, please vote. Like, just vote. Everybody should vote. Everybody should vote. It's election day. It doesn't take that long to do. Please go and do it. That's it. That's my political message. Sorry if that bugs people, but please go vote.
Woo! True patriot, Rob Guerrera.
There you go. All right, everybody. Enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll talk to you next week.